Welcome. This is F a Rap Critic. This is your boy Malik 16 from Plates and Crates. And no, this is not YBN Corday. This is my nephew. What's your name, bro?
My name is Ramel.
And where are you from, sir?
I'm from Harlem.
Harlem in the building. Shout out to the sweater, the Harlem Heartthrob, exclusive from Harlem Girl. Shout out to her. As you can see, we got a new member of the fam here, Mr. Meth. And today is a very special episode, not just because my nephew is here, but because we are reviewing a very special album. It's more in the lane of a modern classic. And what album would that be, sir?
2014 Forest Hill Drive.
By who?
G.O.M.D.
And when did this album drop?
Towards the end of 2014 in December. Surprise album.
Surprise album. So this was around the time where Beyonce really made that trend popular, turned it into a trend. J. Cole was one of the other pioneers who made that really a thing that a lot of artists who had no business doing it tried to do afterwards, but it worked really well for his career. This is one of the most significant albums of his whole rap career and career as a producer. We're gonna get into that. As you all know, if you've been following the page, that we cover albums in 2 categories on this channel. This video will be going over category 1. If you have not, take the time now to like and subscribe, because we are still building this global hip hop community, and we will keep doing so because we want to hear your scores as we tally this up. All right, with no further ado, category 1, the album, the product itself. The first dimension we're going to be talking about is the quality of the production, dimension 1. How would you describe the quality of the production on there? Are these good beats?
Yeah, these are great beats, you know.
What makes them great beats?
You know, because they fit J. Cole's, you know, his rapping, his style of rapping, especially how it moved from passive to aggressive to passive again. Like how he's able to change his flow, especially on the songs. Like
a sandwich almost. It starts off with lighter production, in the middle it gets aggressive, okay, and then it goes back to lighter production. And when we say lighter, you think about the first couple songs, like the intro, this chimey sounds, this piano chords on January 28th, on 03 Adolescence. This is really how the album is starting. He's setting the scene for what, you know, feel he's trying to give you to begin with and end with. And, you know, when we talk about aggressive production, the drums are harder in the middle of the album. On songs like Tale of Two Cities, the drums are knocking with the bass line. Drum kicks are harder, and a lot of deliberate. The horn sounds, the samples that are used. One of the things that stands out, why this is such a significant album to J. Cole's career, is that this was really his arrival as a producer. I think people knew that J. Cole produced most of his albums before, but this was the album where his production really stood out as much as his lyrics, and he was showcasing his range. I think he'd arrived to a place where he was comfortable, and he wasn't trying to do anything else besides what, as Ramel said, would fit his style of rapping. And so you can tell on songs like G.O.M.D, where he's really getting in his bag. He's playing with it. There's like 2 different movements in that song itself. The beat picks up at one point, and then he goes and transitions it into even kind of like an Afrobeat style before Afrobeats became really mainstream to us Americans out here. Just picking it up, and then it turns into almost this dance vibe. But even the sample he used was really clever. The chanting and building the song off of that and putting like these knocking drums to it. So he was really going, and that stands out from a song like Saint-Tropez, which you say you like a lot, right? And Saint-Tropez is more this groove, just like Wet Dreams. Radio ready, because, you know, the melody was just real subtle and it was driven more by the bass line, where Saint-Tropez was this more chill marrying of bass line with these softer sounds. And towards the end of the album, you go back to those softer sounds that are more open. And I think production-wise, he brought a lot of boom bap back, and you're getting those, and he brought back, you know, this real, what people call real hip-hop beats. So something for y'all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. If y'all agree with Ramel that the production was top-notch, rank it. And that takes us directly to dimension 2, the cohesiveness. Now, how well do these beats go together? Do they flow into each other, Ramel?
Yeah, it starts to flow together from the intro, because after January 28th, you flow into Wet Dreams. You hit a and then from Wet Dreams it goes to Adolescent. Then Adolescent, that transition is where it starts to get really aggressive. You get Tales of Two Cities, then you get Firing Squad.
Let's go back to what you're saying about that transition, because I think that in particular that transition from 03 Adolescence to Tale of Two Cities is we really realize you're getting that album experience here. It's like, oh, the way that comes in with the bells and the hard vibrating drum and bass line, you know he's trying to take you to a darker place than he did in the first three songs. Only thing I would say is that after that point, from Tale of Two Cities on, with the exception of Saint Tropez in the middle, I think J. Cole does this thing where he stacks a lot of the aggressive songs in their subject matter back to back, where at the end, you get those three softer songs where he's singing more. And as we talked about, this album feeling like a sandwich, starting off softer and lighter with softer and lighter sounds and ending that way. And in the middle, a bunch of, knocking beats and braggadocio. The sandwich idea is genius in itself, but I did notice that, man, I don't know if I want to hear Firing Squad after Tale of Two Cities, then G.O.M.D. It's just like, it's a lot of, talking to the haters, where at the end it's a lot of singing about life, where maybe we could have afforded a little break in between if you shuffle those songs and mix them up a little bit differently. Something for y'all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. And that takes us to dimension 3, which is the question of, do you feel like this album had an intentional mood or tone? Is there a mood or a tone that's set by this album?
In a way, yes. At the start of the album, he's singing some, trying to keep it calm. Then the middle of the album, was very aggressive, very of, who's like me,
right?
Type of, tone from J. Cole.
What would you say the mood of the album, if he was trying to get something across, one thing across on this album, what do you think he's trying to get across?
So, to his fans, especially with songs at the end, everything comes, be patient, it's gonna be hard. He talks real stuff, even though it's raging aggressive. He does talk real life stuff, real life situations.
If one thing I picked up on, if we're looking back at Cole's career, and I'm trying to keep it really focused just on this album, but I think why this album again is so important is because he had reached the point where a lot of rappers say they don't care or they're free and they're just gonna do things their own way. This album felt like it. It really felt like he was rejecting the industry standards and doing it his way. And we'll talk about this more in Dimension 9, or the impact of the album, but I did get that, because even when he's bragging, he drops like these real life kind of reality rap lines in between the bragging, something that Kanye used to do back in his day too. But you do get that I'm free, I'm not constricted by what they expect of me. I hear that all throughout the album, from January 28th, where he ends it with the line, you could be them, but you ain't the God. It's like he's making this stance, like, I'm humble, but I'm also a beast. It's like a real split between being humble and being arrogant. And that is throughout the album. So if I had to put my finger on a tone or mood, if anything, it'd be somewhere along those lines. Something for y'all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats, which takes us to Dimension 4, which is song distinction versus repetition. How redundant are the sounds on this album and the words? Meaning, are you getting a lot of the same? So when we talk about the production, again, do you feel like he used a lot of the same kind of sounds, a lot of the same drums, a lot of the same instruments?
No. Yeah. Every song had a different sound, a different bass to it. Like, for example, in Tale of Two Cities, he had the bells. And then in G.O.M.D, he used the bass drum a lot in it, especially at the start of it.
With the chants.
Yeah, with the chants.
Mm-hmm. And then you think about, Firing Squad was real bass driven, but that bass line was like unlike any other bass line he used on the album. And again, we referenced Saint-Tropez, and apparently songs like that was softer. Hello. Even though Hello apparently and Love Yours, I think they start to sound similar. It has nothing to do with the production. I think they start to sound similar because these are the songs that Cole chose to predominantly, vocalize on. And so anytime a rapper tends to do the same kind of approach on a number of songs next to each other, it gives you the feeling that, you're hearing some sort of monotony. But, for all intents and purposes, not a lot of repetition of sounds at all. I agree with Ramel. But I will say where we get some of that redundancy is, back to what I was saying in Dimension 2 with the cohesiveness, the sequencing. If we just would have broke that up, if you would have had apparently before No Role Models, and if you would have had Hello after, Tale of Two Cities before Firing Squad, then it might have broke up some of that. By the time you got to Love Yours at the end, it would have felt like, oh, okay, nice come down. You hit a crescendo, you come down to a climax. I think it makes the album a little anticlimactic because 3 songs where he's mostly singing back to back, it's like, okay. Even though he teases you at the end of Apparently with like a whole verse where he's going in, it almost doesn't fit because apparently he's contemplating out loud, and then at the last minute, he wants to spit bars about a hot dog ketchup, had to do it. It's just like, okay, Cole, you could have saved that verse. I think he does approach haters the same way. He talks about haters in the same vein in every song. He talks about women in the same vein in a lot of songs where it's this, almost judgmental tone. I don't know. Something for y'all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. And that takes us to Dimension 5, which is the content versus the amount of songs. Ramel, if you're looking right quick, how many songs are on this album?
13.
It's 13 songs. We talk often about the golden number, the Thriller number, the Illmatic number. 10 is where you're more likely to have just undeniable classics where no song is weak. 13 is, the expected number for a classic rap album. 14 if you're lucky, and if you're really just the exception, you can go beyond that. But in most cases, J. Cole is playing with a really safe number here, 13. It doesn't leave a huge margin for error or whackness. As my nephew told me the other day when we were listening to this album, he's like, there's no such thing as a whack song when it comes to J. Cole. A lot of what happens on this album is J. Cole thinking out loud and sharing his thoughts with you. J. Cole is really clever and deliberate with how he wants to speak to the everyday person from a place of, I've seen it all. I'm young, but I've seen it all. There's a line where he says, son, yeah, I said son, I'm New York's finest. Yeah, there's braggadocio mixed with these life lessons, and coming from a place of, these are life lessons I've learned and I'm sharing them with you. So even, I mentioned how, there's a tone of judgment every now and then when J. Cole talks about women. It's never hard judgment. It's just coming from his observation, and, he'll say some tongue-in-cheek lines about his observation. So, you feel like there's a good amount of content on this album, that he's talking about something here?
Mm-hmm. Especially on the biggest song that almost everybody knows from this album, Wet Dreams, which is about a story.
Of his first time losing his virginity. You got songs like Apparently. 03 Adolescence.
January 28th was a little bit of a story.
A little bit, yeah. I can dig that. And of course, Love Yours, where, I think that's the big message song on this album, where in the hook, he's telling you what the song is about. Listen, love what you have. There's no such thing as a life that's better than yours. And so out of 13, I'd say there's a fair amount of songs where he's talking about something. It's not all the same material. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. See if y'all agree. Something to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to Dimension 6, which is features.
Not a single one.
Not a single one. One of the things a part of being the album that made him stand out and say, I don't need the industry standards, I'm dropping this album with no promo, barely any videos, no radio singles, or no radio push. These songs wound up getting played on the radio anyway. Apparently, Wet Dreams and Role Model, no Role Models were big singles. But it wasn't because he was following the industry standards. So part of that big middle finger to the industry is him saying, hey, I'm doing this all by myself. I'll produce it myself, and I don't need any features. I'm good. Not even a Dreamville can't feature. I don't even think Dreamville was established at that point anyway. So he decided to helm this album completely by himself as the main act, so you know this is coming from him. And you know, on the last track, he's shouting out everyone. That's where he wanted to show the love. He's like, I don't need to put you on the song to show the love. I'm gonna call your name. You know, my favorite part is at the end, he's like, oh, my mama.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, yeah, no features. Y'all can decide if y'all think that takes away from the album, if that's a weak point, and he should have had at least one feature. Like, why didn't you have Kendrick on it, right? And y'all can rank that on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats, which takes us to, speaking of takeaways, Dimension 7, the question of, does the weakest song take away from the album? I have to say, when I was listening to this with you the other day, I said Saint-Tropez, it's chill, it's a nice break in the aggression, but I felt like it was a takeaway. I felt like it was kind of weak. I also felt like Hello was super weak. I was not ready for a whole song of J. Cole singing because honestly, J. Cole is not a singer. It's beautiful to be free and to vocalize and just let your soul speak on tracks. It's part of being an artist. I don't think there's a lot of debate that J. Cole is in fact an artist. We talk on this channel a lot about the difference between being a rapper and being an artist. J. Cole is an artist, but yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel like an organic transition into that song. That song just kind of came and I was like, oh, this is all that's gonna happen on this song. So Hello and Saint-Tropez were the weak songs for me. What do you think is the weakest song on this album, if you had to choose one? Or two of them?
If I had to choose one, you know, even though like I love each and every song, I do think Hello is, because yet again, somebody like J. Cole, an artist, he may have, you know, thought, you know, let's sing a little bit, let's try something new, because that's what it's about, being an artist, trying new things. And
right.
That's one of the things. But you know, you got Hello, you got apparently, even though he started rapping at the end, that's 3 singing songs back to back.
You know, part of being an artist is knowing the line between appealing to your audience and being self-indulgent. When you reach a certain point in your career, you can afford to be a little self-indulgent. I think this was a point in J. Cole's career where he could afford it. So we get songs like Hello. You know, in hindsight, it definitely seems like I just wanted to do this on a track. I don't care what y'all think. Sometimes you do have to care what your audience thinks, which takes us to the next dimension. But if y'all are cool with these songs, I would love to hear what y'all think are the weakest tracks. And if you feel like the weakest track takes away, for me, listening to it, I would think that those 2 songs were takeaways. I would love to see what y'all think on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Dimension 8, Mass Appeal. How much do you know your audience? Where was J. Cole trying to go with this album, right? We talked about the theme and the tone. If the theme, tone, and the mood was, I don't need to go by the industry standards, I'm gonna do what I feel, this album is close to home, I'm gonna take y'all back to where I'm from. Anyone that's ever seen the HBO special that he did for this album, it felt like this was very personal. I need to return to my roots. I've been doing all these things that, you know, they wanted me to do. You know, I've been living in New York for a long time. Let me take y'all back to Carolina and show y'all Carolina Jermaine, right? But at the end of the day, he's still a signed artist on a label who is giving y'all a product for mass consumption. Do we think that he wanted this album to go where it went? I'll be honest, I can't tell. I can't tell, Ramel, if J. Cole knew how far this album would have gone, if he even cared about the outcome. To an extent, you gotta think an artist always cares about having their product heard. This album spawned a lot of songs that have now reached iconic status. People love rapping over the instrumentals to those beats. The videos to those songs were amazing. I just don't know how visionary J. Cole was with how far he wanted them to go.
And, you know, to pick up on what Uncle Malik said, for him to have no major push, you know, to not pull a Kendrick or a Drake feature out his back pocket, and on top of that, surprise album for how great it did, that's very good for J. Cole.
J. Cole, I'm giving him a lot of credit because I know he's a clever individual, and I think a good enough artist to know that when he's making a song like Wet Dreams and he's making a song like No Role Models, that they had the kind of hooks, the kind of beats that would instantly, you know, make people gravitate. Those are undeniable songs. When you hear the, you know, when he's using the old standard line, he chooses to go, "Don't save her, she don't want to be saved." No, and that's a classic refrain in hip hop history. You knew that was gonna attract listeners and be something that people wanted to hear again. Wet Dreams, you know, the hook that he chose, the melody that he chose on that, very catchy. How easy is it to repeat? And I never did this before, no. I think he did know where he was going, but I think it's genius to act like you don't care, but still execute songs in a way where you know they have legs to stand on. So, want to give Cole that credit. I think he knew it was going to have a wide appeal to his fans. I don't know if he knew this was going to attract him new fans. And this actually, ironically, turned out to be the album that got him new fans. So something for y'all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. Takes us directly into Dimension 9. The 3 I's: impact, innovation, and influence. I think, Ramel, you were just talking about this, the impact of it having no push and what?
No, like, preparing people, and it was a surprise, no features. You know, him basically saying, I want to show them that I can really do this on my own.
Yeah. And it wound up, like I said, I think this is the album that attracted a lot of new J. Cole fans. I definitely heard more women talking about J. Cole than I ever heard before or after this album came out. I remember starting a new job and my clients were singing Apparently and saying they feel that song in their soul. And I was like, wow. And then he was doing, you know, I think he was this classic video still floating around YouTube because this is around the same time that the Mike Brown controversy came out, and he did extra verses on some of his songs. He's doing late night appearances. So even though there was this lack of visibility in the traditional promo push, he was showing up where it counted. And I think that's part of the innovation of the way this album was marketed, because he wasn't doing the traditional, you know, rollout for an artist. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna show it where it counted. And his timing was impeccable. He just showed up, spoke on things that were really important, and put songs out here and there that mattered at the right times. And we think about influence. You think this album influenced other rappers afterwards?
Yeah, it influenced other rappers, especially some of the rappers that you hear now today, like some of the Dreamville members, G.O.M.D.
I definitely saw a lot more rappers growing out their hair after he came out with his hair, because we hadn't seen Cole for a while. People were wondering, you know, what was up with his career. I think the last thing we heard before that, like he had a song where he said he let Nas down. Nas jumped on the remix. He got into some beef with like Diggy Simmons. Again, don't start us with the gossiping. We're not a hip hop gossip channel, but you see this man come back. He's got a beard. He's got these locks that he's growing. He's singing. He's taking you somewhere different. You knew he was going somewhere different. I certainly saw a lot more rappers start growing their hair, start singing freely on songs, even if they couldn't sing. It was about being more free and not doing the norm. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I definitely saw more rappers trying to drop surprise albums. It didn't work out as well for them. And so we saw that. And I think we got more rappers caring about what they said. J. Cole cares about what he says. We'll talk about that when we talk about the rap performance on the album. You know, there's a passion that he brings to each song. So, you know, something for y'all to consider. The 3 I's: impact, innovation, and influence. Rank that on a scale of 1 to 5 heartbeats. That takes us to the final dimension. How timeless or unique is this album? Did this album sound like everything else that was going on at this time? Or does it last the test of time because it stands out some way? And how does it stand out?
You know, at that time, it is a true masterpiece, and it did stand out from a lot of other rappers at that time.
J. Cole brought some organic feel to it, back to hip hop, where that boom bap aesthetic mixed with these melodic sounds, with him talking about reality rap, life lessons, and bragging, and keeping up with all the real spitters of the time, because this was also the rebirth of rapidy rappers, as we like to call them. This was Jay Electronica, this was Big Sean, this was Big Crit, this was Yellow Wolf, ASAP, and people really wondering who's gonna be the one, Joey Badass. And this was J. Cole saying, I stand out among all of these guys. I can keep up with them, and I'm talking about more stuff. And by the way, I produce my own beats. And so because there's a level of musicality here, I think that's what will make these songs last the test of time. J. Cole was also saying things that weren't being said in hip hop that are still relevant to this day. So, you know, some of those factor into timelessness. It definitely stood out because of what was going on in hip hop at the time. So you're absolutely right. Something for y'all to consider on a scale from 1 to 5 heartbeats. And that has been all 10 dimensions of category 1. Join me and my nephew for the second video where we go into category 2, which is the rap performance on the album. If you have not already, like and subscribe, you know what it is. Until then, F for Rap Critic. Talk about it while I live it. Word to meth.